Today, I want to share a simple story with you, but it has a really deep message. It's called The River and the Rock, a story of persistence.
So let's begin. Picture this. High up in the mountains, there was a young river. It was just starting its journey, full of life and energy, just rushing along its path.
So first, let's talk about the river and the rock it met along the way. Everything was going fine for the river, but then it ran into a problem, a really big problem. A huge rock was standing right in its way, completely blocking its path forward. Now, what do you think the river did first? Well, it tried to use its strength. It basically yelled at the rock, "Move away! I am strong!" So the river pushed and pushed with all its might. You can just imagine the water splashing everywhere in a great show of effort. But the rock didn't budge, not even a little. The river's force, it just didn't work. After a while, the river got tired. It realized that trying to fight the rock wasn't the answer. So it stopped, and it did something much smarter. It just began flowing around the rock. And this is a really important part of the story. You see, this wasn't a quick fix. Days passed, then months, and even years. And all that time, the river just kept flowing, gently on its new path. And you know what? Over all that time, something amazing started to happen. It was slow, for sure, but the river's constant, gentle flow began to change the rock. The rock's sharp edges started to get smooth. Tiny little pieces started to break away. And finally, after a long, long time, the river's path was clear again. It won, but not because it was the most powerful. It won because it was persistent and because it was adaptable. You know, this story is more than just a nice tale. It actually shows us a real scientific idea. So let's talk about the science behind this persistence and take a moment to understand erosion. What the river was doing to the rock? Well, that's a perfect example of a process called erosion. It's a pretty simple idea, really. Erosion is just what happens when natural forces, like flowing water, slowly wear away at hard things, like rock and earth, over a very long time. So let's compare the two ways the river tried to solve its problem. At first, it used instant force. That took a lot of energy, it was very tiring, and it got no results. But then it switched to consistent motion. This used low energy, but it created real, lasting change. It was much more effective. And that's a key lesson from nature, isn't it? That time and consistency are often much more powerful than just one big burst of force. Okay, so we've heard the story, we've looked at the science. What does this all mean for us? This brings us to the lesson for life, the wisdom of water. We can really break down the river's wisdom into 3 simple ideas. First, adaptability is a kind of strength. Sometimes being flexible is more powerful than being forceful. Second, when your way is blocked, find another way. Don't just give up. And third, remember that small efforts, when you do them again and again, create big change. So really, it all comes down to this simple truth. Just like the river, real success in life often doesn't come from aggression. It comes from patience and from having a clear sense of direction. And I'll leave you with a question to think about. We all have our own rocks in our path, right? Obstacles we have to face. So what happens when we choose to be like the river?